The movie opens in the Swedish city of Kiruna, where a news report informs viewers about a recent earthquake with a magnitude of 4.8 on the Richter scale. The anchor also highlights that the city faces more than 100 unexpected shocks each year. The extensive mining has made tremors more frequent, and there's a risk they could lead to a disastrous earthquake soon. The scene then shifts to a group of teens drinking and having fun near the Kiruna Rift Zone. Moments later, one of the boys goes to a restricted place to urinate. Two of his friends hurry to stop him as the area is too dangerous. However, it's too late as a series of tremors suddenly strike, causing all of them to fall into the crack. And people say pissing isn't dangerous until you're over 40. In the following scene, we meet a woman named Frigga, who is the security supervisor in the mining area of this city. Using her device, she investigates the cause and strength of the earthquakes occurring near the mining site. Later, she watches old videos of her son Simon and misses him a lot because it's his birthday today. Turns out the boy is currently living with his father in another city. Afterward, Frigga heads to the train station to pick up her boyfriend, Dalbir. On the way, he shocks her by revealing his plan to relocate to Kiruna. He reasons that he wants to be closer to her, so he's willing to make this sacrifice. A while later, they encounter some protesters rallying to save a local cafe owned by a girl named Ayla and her grandmother. In a heated exchange, Frigga nearly hits a protester, who turns out to be her own daughter, Mika. It turns out that Mika is dating Ayla, which explains her efforts to save the cafe from demolition. This causes an argument between the mother and daughter, but they are eventually separated by others. Upon arriving home, Frigga and Dalbir enjoy some fun time together in the living room. However, their romantic moment is cut short when her ex-husband, Teg, unexpectedly shows up. He has come to surprise their son, Simon, who apparently didn't stay home the previous night and isn't responding to calls. Seeing his ex-wife with another man, he is shocked and disappointed. Moments later, Mika and Ayla also arrive, making Dalbir feel quite awkward in this family situation, especially since he still has a half-chub tucked into his waistband. The family assumes that Simon is in his room, so they light a cake and head there to surprise him. However, upon reaching there, they realize he's not home. Suddenly, a strong earthquake hits the town, sending them into a state of panic. Frigga then decides to go check the mining area and asks Mika to find her brother as soon as possible. While leaving home, Tag, who is jealous of Dalbir, messes up his car and asks for a ride with Frigga. So the three leave in her car and the situation becomes awkward. Dalbir, who still has that half-chub, apologizes to Tag and expresses regret that they met under these circumstances. When they arrive at the mining area, Tag decides to go inside with Frigga and tells Dalbir to leave. He then makes it clear that his children do not need another dad. He also advises Dalbir to reconsider his relationship with Frigga because she hasn't signed the divorce papers yet. However, Dalbir claims that he is sure she loves him, and the unsigned papers mean nothing. Following this, Frigga, Tag, and two other co-workers walk through the mine facilities, searching for any potential risks. They also use drones to scout and understand the geological structure of the area. After advancing 520 meters inside, they hear the sound of rocks vibrating within the mine. Frigga lightly taps a wall with a hammer, which immediately collapses and almost hurts her. Maybe don't hit it with a hammer next time. Her colleagues rush to her aid, but she reassures them that she's fine. The group is shocked when they discover a massive cavity in the area. When Tag wonders why the cavity was not discovered sooner, Frigga explains that there has been no mining in this area for the past 40 years. Realizing that the cavity is close to Kiruna, Frigga decides to immediately report the mine's condition and evacuate everyone. She understands that if this situation is not addressed promptly, the whole city could sink into the cavity. Elsewhere in the city, a little boy is playing in the sand when suddenly the ground begins to sink. The child is horrified and he is about to sink inside the large hole, but before that can happen, Ayla spots him and manages to rescue him. On the other hand, Mika is going around town looking for her brother Simon. She soon notices someone sleeping in his car and thinks it's him. Unfortunately, it's one of Simon's friends who is drunk and passed out. Mika angrily breaks the car window and asks the guy where her brother is. She could have just knocked, but this family likes hammers. This scares him and he tries to run away, but she goes after him. Moments later, Dalbir, who is just passing by, notices the commotion and helps Mika. The two then catch the guy and he finally reveals that Simon was probably at the party they had near the Rift Zone. Alarmed, Mika decides to visit the Rift Zone and asks Dalbir for his help. He obliges and takes out his car keys from his pocket, but in the process, he also drops a ring box. This shocks Mika as she realizes that he has been planning to propose to her mother. Meanwhile, at the mine, mine, Frigga and her team are about to leave when a huge earthquake suddenly occurs, causing everything to collapse. The group quickly runs away and seeks refuge in a safe room. After some time, the earthquake subsides and they come out of the room. But to their horror, their exit has been blocked by the falling rocks. Upon closer inspection, Frigga notices a small gap under the rocks, just enough space to squeeze through. So they decide to go through the rocks one by one. Frigga successfully manages to pass through, but when it comes to Tag, he becomes terrified as he is claustrophobic. After some persuasion by his colleagues, he eventually decides to try, but soon succumbs to extreme panic and begins shouting, "I don't like this!" Frigga extends an iron rod to him and asks him to grab it so she can pull him out. However, he becomes completely paranoid and starts yelling that he will die there. "It's game over, man!" This annoys Frigga, so she hits his head with the rod, knocking him out. She then hooks the same rod into his clothes and drags him out. Following this, another colleague successfully manages to pass through the rocks, but when it's the last woman's turn, another earthquake occurs. This causes her legs to become trapped in the rocks, injuring her badly. Frigga does her best to help the woman, but she is eventually crushed by the rocks and killed. Meanwhile, in the town, Mika and Dalbir are having a serious conversation after she sees the ring. She begins to warm up to her mother's new boyfriend, but Dalbir expresses doubt because Frigga hasn't signed the divorce papers yet. Mika then claims that her mother hasn't signed it because it would devastate her father, Tag. She says that a divorce is just a piece of paper and that her parents have been separated for a long time. After this conversation, the two head to the Rift Zone to find Simon, where the teens were partying at the start of the movie. They come across a large crack, and within it, a phone is ringing. Upon closer inspection, they notice lifeless bodies there and become frightened. Mika then calls her brother's number, and it doesn't ring nearby, which means that he is not in this place, or that his phone is dead. In another scene, Frigga and her team emerge from the mine, but she is still in deep shock over the death of her colleague. Despite her emotional state, she promptly calls Mika and asks about her location. Upon learning that she is in the Rift Zone, Frigga advises her not to return to the city, as it is at risk of collapsing. She instead asks her to head to the new Kiruna city along with Dalbir. However, Mika decides to go back to retrieve her girlfriend Ayla before making her escape. Not long after, Frigga informs the authorities, and upon her order, an announcement is made all over the city. As soon as the alarm goes off, chaos begins, and people start running all over the streets. Meanwhile, Frigga and Tag also start looking for their son on the streets. They soon notice a boy who looks like Simon, and they begin chasing him. At the same time, Mika also finds Ayla, and together they decide to escape in a car. They are almost engulfed by the sinkhole, but Dalbir manages to rescue them in the nick of time. Moments later, they are horrified to witness the collapse of the mine tower, and the city begins to crumble around them. Everyone starts running, but Ayla cannot keep up, and she ends up tragically losing her life. After the earthquake stops, Frigga and Tag manage to approach the lifeless body that they thought was their son. However, it turns out to be some other kid, bringing relief to them. Meanwhile, Mika is in shock after the loss of her girlfriend, so her parents try to console her. They also express gratitude to Dalbir for his help. Following this, the citizens make their way to the hospital in New Kiruna, where many patients are being treated. There, Frigga comes across a friend of Simon, who reveals that he was planning to leave this place because he was tired of seeing his family broken. So, he had decided to play Call of Duty for the last time in the school computer lab. Get that KD ratio up a little bit, get some headshots a little bit. Meanwhile, Tag approaches Dalbir to thank him again for saving his daughter's life. However, upon seeing him holding a ring, he gets all butthurt and mad. One thing leads to another, and they begin fighting like kids. This forces Frigga to intervene, and she orders both the men to behave. Once everyone is calmed down, she tells them about Simon's whereabouts, and they all decide to go to the school. Upon reaching there, they see a scared student sitting outside the school. They ask him about Simon, but the kid doesn't reply and begins mumbling to himself. The group then heads inside and plans to go to the computer lab. Call of Duty is very addictive after all. However, they realize that the entrance is completely blocked. Moments later, Frigga sees a small hole in the corner of the wall and crawls in. She then arrives at the computer lab, where she comes across several dead bodies of students. She also notices a girl impaled by a rod through the abdomen. The poor kid is still alive and crying for help. Frigga goes to help her, but just then, she hears Simon's voice coming from below and decides decides, screw this other kid. She quickly shines her flashlight into the pit, and this is when she finally spots her son in the corner. At this moment, the rest of the family also arrives. The group then tries to save the injured girl, but the ground collapses and she ends up dying. Now, Frigga enters the crack using a pipe to save her son. Before she can rescue him, she hits a pole and injures her leg. This results in Frigga losing a lot of blood, but her mind is still focused on saving her son. Simon then asks who the new guy is, and she truthfully tells him that he's her new boyfriend. She says that if he doesn't like Dalbeer, she won't marry him and will stay with his dad. That is so much pressure. However, Simon says no and claims that he just wants her to be happy. Meanwhile, Micah gets worried seeing her injured mother, so she asks her dad to hold the rope and jumps towards it. She then slides from a column to the lower level and reaches her mother. At this point, Simon also makes a dangerous jump to reach Frigga. The siblings successfully get the rod out of their mom's leg. Dalbeer then lowers a rope to pull them out, and Simon exits the sinkhole. However, when the walls begin to crumble, Mika and Frigga are forced to hop onto a vending machine that is almost hanging by its cord. Moments later, the vending machine cable also starts to break, leaving them in a dire situation. They give Dalbeer enough time to save his family. Tag rushes over and grabs hold of the severed cable and the wall. This manages to hold the vending machine, but soon the electrical cables supporting the structure start to loosen up. Therefore, Tag holds the bare cables to give his family enough time to reach the surface. This enables Frigga and Micah to somehow reach the top, but unfortunately, Tag gets electrocuted and passes away. In the final scene, the paramedics arrive, and we see Tag's body being removed from the high school. The family is still in shock and devastated that he sacrificed his life for them. They didn't want him around anymore, but not like this. Frigga is taken to an ambulance where she stares at Dalbeer, who is still holding on to the ring he bought for her. Who is the winner of the game today? Dalbeers! Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.